Have you been fighting lingering gut symptoms for longer than you care to recall, having tried several options to make it better with no help? Maybe you've even listened to some experts suggesting things like avoiding dairy and trying the latest probiotics. Well, I have some good news for you. Rather than taking away triggers for your gut, let's try adding back one of nature's proven health promoting foods: raw milk. Gut issues are common in our society, very common in fact. Many just ignore them, hoping that they'll go away. Some seek the advice of professionals looking for resolution, but rarely find it. Well, today I'm going to share with you an alternative, but an equally valid point of view that emphasizes milk, but not conventional milk, rather raw A2 milk. But before we get started, let me introduce myself. My name is Arlen Hill. I'm a regenerative rancher that helps those interested in animal-based products streamline where and how to find the products that they really seek. And if you stick around to the end today, I'm going to share with you how to find real milk near you. Now, on to helping your gut. There are two reasons that this video is relevant for you. The first is that the information that I'm going to present today is going to give you a different perspective on milk completely. The second is that you're going to walk away with a tool to not only remedy your gut ailments, but also prevent recurrence. No one wants to deal with recurrence, so let's nip that in the bud today. And we're going to do this by discussing how to add a category, a food category, into your diet rather than taking things away. A lot of times we like to hear, or we often hear, not that we like to hear it, but a lot of times we often hear about, well, take this out of your diet, take that out of your diet, and that should make it better. Well, how about if we just add the right things back to your diet that are proven to get results? And that's going to be the focus for us today. But before I can get into any of that for you and deliver on that, I need to tackle the elephant in the room. And that is that dairy contributes to health ailments, to health issues. And to be clear on this, dairy can be associated with mucus production, allergies, sensitivities, weakened overall immune function, type 1 diabetes, autoimmune conditions, other gut symptoms. I mean, it's a pretty long list that dairy has been linked to. But these are all reactions to conventional dairy, and that's not our conversation today. And the reason that's not our conversation today is that when you look at conventional dairy and raw dairy, they're two completely different products. Yes, they both go by the name dairy, and yes, they both are called milk, but they're entirely different products. And so let me tell you why that is to start out. So it really comes down to the process of pasteurization. You'll probably see on labels when you've looked at conventional dairy products, they say terms like pasteurization or even now ultra pasteurization. You'll also see terms in there like homogenization. And these are just terms that tell you that there's been a change to the milk, to the constituents in the milk, to the structure of the milk. It's a different substance. And so we want to make sure that we understand that, and more specifically what's happening here when these changes take place, specifically through the pasteurization process, we're destroying bacteria. We're seeing that there are changes in the protein structures in the milk. I'll explain why that's important. We're looking at the necessity to add nutrients back to the milk, and that's because a lot of the binding factors and components that allow nutrients to be assimilated more easily, those have been damaged. And these are the very things that can help heal your gut, but they've all been altered in some way when we talk about conventional milk. Conventional milk just starts out quite differently too. In fact, even the breeds of cow that conventional milk versus raw milk comes from is different. Your conventional milk, typically from large dairies that you find in retail stores, that's coming from a breed of cows generally known as Holstein. And your raw dairy, which is more of a local farm product that's coming from small dairies, you're going to find different breeds of cows here, but typically they're going to be Jersey cattle, Guernsey, or brown Swiss. These are more of the raw milk producing, your raw milk, your local farms, they're going to be using those breeds of cattle. So What is it that exactly raw milk has that's different? Well, it maintains the bacteria, it keeps the protein structures intact, and it preserves multiple nutrients in their food-based forms. So let me give you a real-world example of the difference here, and then we're going to dive into the differences in the bacteria and why that's important. So when you take conventional milk, if you've grown up around that or you have it in your home, you know that if it goes past the expiration date or even as it starts getting close to the expiration date, you can smell that milk is going sour. It goes bad. It just has a very unpleasant smell to it. However, when you look at raw milk doesn't go bad. When it starts to change, the bacteria are actually working on that and fermenting it, and what you'll find is that rather than going sour, it actually converts over to more like a cottage cheese when you leave it out. In fact, when this happens around our home, we actually just take that and feed it to our chickens and our ducks, and they eat it up without any hesitation. But it's not bad per se, it's just fermented. So there is a difference there, and I just wanted you to see that real world example. But I mentioned 3 areas of focus that we want to look at as to how raw milk can be an ally to your GI tract. And again, it's going to be the 3, or that it maintains the bacteria, it's going to keep the protein structures intact, and it's going to preserve multiple nutrients in their food forms. So let me tackle each one of those for you. So the first one is the bacteria in milk. Well, there's 2 types of bacteria that can end up in milk. The first are what are known as your illness or disease-forming bacteria, what we often think about maybe more generically as your dysbiotic bacteria. But these will have names, some of which you've heard, things like Clostridia, E. coli, Campylobacter, Pseudomonas, Listeria. None of these are good. You don't want these proliferating in the foods that you're consuming. You don't want them proliferating in your gut. But these are not the only type of bacteria that are found in dairy. You also have health-promoting bacteria, and these are the ones that predominate, and I'll explain how they predominate, but you'll recognize these as things like Lactobacillus species. They also go by names which is maybe less commonly known of Enterococcal species. But Lactobacillus, let's focus on that because that's a name you're familiar with. You can see that one in probiotics if you've ever looked at a label of probiotics. So these are going to be health promoting. And part of the reason that they're health promoting is that they inhibit the dysbiotic species. So all those organisms that I've mentioned prior that you don't want proliferating in the food and certainly not in your GI tract, the beneficial bacteria, the Lactobacillus species, inhibit their growth. And they do that by producing compounds that are known as bacteriorosins, organic acids. There's some other low molecular weight substances that are going to inhibit the dysbiotic, the undesirable species from proliferating. Now, these beneficial organisms like Lactobacillus, they have a broad range of physiological and mental benefits. For example, they can help and have been shown to help in conditions like obesity, diabetes, liver disease, cardiovascular disease, numerous gastrointestinal conditions, even psychiatric disorders such as depression, anxiety, autism. They even go by a fancy name known as psychobiotics, which just means psychologically nourishing probiotics. But these psychobiotics, they're all beneficial. They're the organisms that are found in milk that can in turn impart a benefit to your health. And you may find them, for example, like I mentioned, you've probably seen these some of these in a probiotic, the Lactobacillus species. But when you compare dairy directly to a probiotic, there's some significant differences here. Remember, that's what I wanted to share with you is why consuming dairy, raw dairy, can basically help heal your gut faster than a probiotic. And part of the reason is that the delivery of some of the strains that you get in milk aren't going to be found in probiotics. There's strains of beneficial bacteria that you can find in milk that you're just not going to find in a probiotic. And there's a broader array of these species. So you're going to find much higher numbers, much more diversity in the milk than you are in the probiotic. And in addition, so that's not the only one, you're going to find that there's more direct impact on these pathogens when you're looking at the probiotics delivered from milk as opposed to when you're taking a probiotic directly. These organisms in milk are already in the process of inhibiting the growth of these problematic bacteria, so they're already basically, they've already got a head start, if you will. And the other thing is that when you look at a supplemental probiotic, especially if you're just grabbing anyone off the shelf or anyone online, just randomly ordering something, you should have concerns about the quality control linked to that product, the efficacy, if it's actually going to work. Am I actually getting what I'm paying for? So there's a cost consideration here. All of that stuff gets eliminated when you look at dairy, because if you're eating raw dairy, you're actually getting those things in there guaranteed. So if we're keeping score right now, this is 1 for raw dairy and 0 for probiotics. But remember, bacteria is only the first thing that we're talking about here. The next thing that we're going to take a look at is going to be the protein structure in raw dairy, and why keeping that protein structure intact when you don't pasteurize the product is so important. And it comes down to what are known as bioactive peptides. These are protein components. So peptides are just chains of protein subunits known as amino acids, and based on the sequencing of the amino acids, they can have a therapeutic benefit. Well, there's several of these that are found in raw dairy. So you find things like lactoferrin, beta-lactoglobulin, immunoglobulins, glycomacropeptides, bovine serum albumin, alpha-lactalbumin, right? So don't worry about the individual names on these. That's not the important part here. The important part on this is that these have been shown, every one of those has been shown to have significant health promoting benefits. But there is one of these that I am going to focus on, and that's the first one that I mentioned, which is lactoferrin. So the reason I'm going to focus on lactoferrin is because its impacts are so significant in the body. It's what's known as an endogenous protein. So it's inherently found in the body that contains iron. And because of it containing iron, it allows it to have multiple antibacterial, antiviral, antifungal, and even has been shown to have anti-cancer properties. And quite simply, the importance of this molecule cannot be understated, even to the point that some studies have called it the human genome guardian, so meaning that it guards your genes and protects them from mutating. It's been labeled as a miracle molecule, and here's why. If you look at this illustration, you'll see all the different areas that are benefited by the presence of lactoferrin. But there's two of these that I want to focus on. There's two mechanisms here that I want to focus on for our discussion. Number one is the impact on the microbiome. After all, we're looking at how to heal your gut and get your gut to function better. And if we can impact the microbiome, well, clearly that's important in that process. And the way that lactoferrin impacts the microbiome is that it restores balance. It inhibits these dysbiotic, these pathogens, these dysbiotic organisms, these pathogens, these ones that we want to inhibit. It prevents them from growing. And in addition, when we're young, the presence of lactoferrin also shapes our infant microbiota. So the presence and the layout of the microbiota in our gut when we're young, well, that's in part shaped by lactoferrin. But there's another mechanism here from lactoferrin that's also relevant, and that's going to be its antimicrobial effect. And this comes back to it's inhibiting these pathogens, these really problematic organisms from growing. The Clostridia, the E. coli, the Listeria, the Pseudomonas, the ones that I mentioned earlier. It's going to make those pathogens more sensitive to antimicrobials, so they're more easily disrupted. These protective layers that they can have around them, known as biofilms, it's going to disrupt those protective layers as well. And even if someone's dealing with a virus, it can even inhibit viral replication. So lactoferrin It's a pretty important molecule, a pretty important bioactive peptide that we want to nourish or nurture the benefit of. And remember, I'm only giving you two mechanisms here. There's numerous ones beyond that. After all, it's called a miracle molecule for a reason. But when you look at conventional milk, well, conventional milk is going to inactivate lactoferrin because of the pasteurization process. So when you have all these mechanisms for lactoferrin working for you, when you're really concerned about healing your gut, it's a whole lot easier to heal your gut when you've got lactoferrin as your ally and you're not ignoring it in your diet. So again, let's compare to probiotics here, and we're looking at these proteins. These compared to probiotics, well, they're not going to deliver any of these bioactive peptides that can change the landscape in your gut. So that's one thing. The inhibition of these dysbiotic organisms, probiotics can do that to a limited degree, but these bioactive peptides, they're rock stars when it comes to inhibiting the growth of these dysbiotic organisms. And then you take those bioactive peptides and you layer in the presence of probiotics that are already in the raw milk, and man, what a 1-2 punch to keep those organisms that you don't want growing under control. Now, there's a third component here that we need to talk about in raw milk that makes it a really strong ally for using in terms of healing your gut. And that is that it preserves multiple nutrients in their food-based form. Raw milk is extremely rich in nutrients, but these are often damaged in conventional milk. Sometimes it's that the nutrient itself is directly damaged, and other times it's that some of the constituents that are linked to that nutrient are damaged. And remember, probiotics don't deliver, when we talk about nutrients, probiotics don't directly deliver nutrients, whereas they may help assist in nutrient production once they've started proliferating in the body. In contrast to raw dairy, you're directly delivering those nutrients in a form that they can be easily used and easily assimilated. And we're talking about such a broad array of nutrients. Quite frankly, when you look at raw milk, it's pretty hard to compare against raw milk in terms of what it actually delivers. It delivers high quality protein. I've already touched on that. It delivers fats, carbohydrates. You're getting minerals in there, things like zinc, iodine. Of course, you get calcium in there, and there's other minerals as well. You get a broad array of B vitamins in here. You get metabolites like choline that can nourish the cells, the nervous system. You get, like I mentioned before, probiotics, and of course they are going to help with their own production of nutrients like vitamin K and the B vitamins. And then you get all of that in a complete food matrix. So it's easily assimilated, it's easily utilized and recognized by the body, taken in a highly bioavailable form and put to use. Okay, so here we are at the third point, and if you guys are keeping score, it's 2 for raw milk at this point and 0 for the probiotics. So how did the probiotics score on the last section, in our third section here? Well, compared to probiotics, which are not a complete food matrix, raw dairy is a complete food matrix. And when it comes to taking more to heal the gut than just probiotics, well, raw milk's going to deliver a whole lot more than your probiotics are. In fact, milk could even be considered a prebiotic because it's going to help those probiotics proliferate, and it's going to directly provide nutrients that are going to nourish the cells in the gut. So if we're keeping track here, that's 3 for raw milk and 0 for probiotics. So it looks like it's a shutout for raw milk here. Now, I don't think there's any need at this point to reiterate what seems to be a clearly evident point, which is that raw milk outperforms probiotics for gut healing in every category. So now you need to know where you can find raw milk, and I did promise that that's something that I was going to share with you. So here's how you do it. You're going to go and visit realmilk.com. Let me say that again. That is realmilk.com. and there you can use the Milk Finder search engine, and that's going to help you find farms that are near you that produce and sell raw milk. But raw milk is not the only part of an animal-based diet that can improve your gut health and overall health, quite frankly. If you want to see how an animal-based diet literally changed my life in the first 6 months that I was on it, well, check out this video. Oh, and if you need regeneratively sourced animal-based products, visit harvesthillsranch.com, where transparency and truth reign true.